Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz is in New Delhi after postponing his visit twice before. He is scheduled to meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Indian counterpart Rajnath Singh. During the visit, both sides will sign a document aimed at deepening security relations and marking 30 years of diplomatic and defense ties between Israel and India. The Israeli Defense Minister will be accompanied by the country's Chief of Staff, Head of the Directorate for International Defense Cooperation, Brigadier General Yakulas, Director of Policy and Political Military Bureau, Dror Shalom, and Military Secretary B.G. Yakidolf. Gantz will begin his day by paying homage at the National War Memorial in New Delhi. He will then hold talks with Rajnath Singh and will be given the Guard of Honour. At around 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time, Gantz will meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Israeli Defense Minister was scheduled to visit New Delhi back in March as well. However, that visit had to be postponed after he contracted coronavirus and, of course, in the backdrop of the terror attacks in Israel that left dozens dead. Gantz's visit comes amid celebrations marking 30 years of establishing diplomatic ties between both the nations. India and Israel established full diplomatic relations on the 29th of January 1992. Earlier this year, a commemorative logo was also launched to mark 3 decades of ties. In February, iconic buildings in India and Israel, including the Gateway of India in Mumbai, the Teen Murti Chowk in Delhi and the Masada Fortress in Israel, they were lit up in Indian and Israeli colors. Now, this is Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz's visit in New Delhi. This after he had to postpone it twice before. He is scheduled to meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and, of course, his Indian counterpart Rajnath Singh as well. Now, during this particular visit, both the sides they'll sign a document amid deepening security relations and marking 30 years of diplomatic and defense ties between Israel and India. The Defence Minister is being accompanied by the country's Chief of Staff, Head of Directorate for International Defence, Director of Policy and Political Military Bureau and Military Secretary as well. Gantz will begin his day by paying homage at the National War Memorial in New Delhi. There he will hold talks. From there he will hold talks with Rajnath Singh and then will be given the Guard of Honour as well. And for more information on this, we're now being joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibbal, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Benny Gantz is here to sign a security declaration, like I just mentioned. Now, can you tell us what this declaration is about?
Well, the details hasn't been given out by the Israeli side because it's the Israeli side that has announced the signing of the security pact. But I'm standing at the location where the Guard of Honour is due to start shortly. In fact, the Indian side, the Indian Army Chief, the Indian Defence Minister have arrived at the location. We're just waiting for the Israeli Defence Minister to now come, and of course the ceremony starts. And of course it's a long day because not only he meets the Indian Defence Minister and holds the conversation, which will be of course a pretty long conversation, but also calls on the Indian Prime Minister. Now, meeting with the Indian Prime Minister is significant because usually a visiting Defence Minister is not meeting the Indian Prime Minister. He meets the Indian Defence Minister and has other engagements. So that shows the relationship, that how the relationship is strong and how both sides are giving each other a privileged position when it comes to the relationship. But nonetheless, the visit happens even as both sides are celebrating 30 years of relationship. It was in the year 1992 that both countries formally established diplomatic and defense relationship. And this year we will see a lot of high-level engagements and of course ceremonies like these which will be essentially about celebration of the relationship.
Right. In fact, I was just going to ask you, Siddhant, are there any such initiatives that we know about planned to mark the celebrations of completing 30 years of diplomatic ties between India and Israel? Anything that we know about?
Well, one key focus area has been high-level visits. The Israeli Prime Minister was due to visit India earlier this year. In fact, the Israeli Defense Minister was also due to visit India, but the visit was cancelled because the Israeli Prime Minister was found confirmed with COVID. So that visit got postponed. In fact, this is a postponed visit that is now happening here in Delhi. But other than that, we know that both sides also came up with a logo earlier this year. and also historical places, whether it's the Masada Fort in Israel, whether it's India Gate area or the Gateway of India. These areas were lit up with Indian and Israeli flag colors as part of the celebration. So rest assured, one thing that we are going to see is a lot of high-level visits, whether it's by the Israeli leadership or whether it's by the Indian leadership to Israel to celebrate this important moment in the relationship.
Right. All right, Siddhant, thank you so much for bringing us all the updates on that. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.